an ambitious chronicle of American expansion into the West before, during, and after the Civil War, Horizon, an American Saga, stars Kevin Costner in the lead role of an ensemble cast that travels across the territories that will one day become Kansas, Wyoming, and Montana. Unfortunately for the Academy Award winner, the film opened to one of the lowest Rotten Tomatoes scores of Costner's career. The first chapter of the long-gestating passion project has received a skewed negative reception, which does not bode well for the continuation of the traditional Western epic. Although the first two chapters are already filmed and will be released back-to-back, the production of the planned third and fourth chapters likely hinges on the success of the first two. Horizon marks the fourth time that Costner has been in the director's chair, and so far there are several common reasons why critics haven't embraced Horizon, an American Saga. Considering how much of his own money Costner has sunk into the project, the four-part epic represents an incredible gamble, and poor early reviews won't help buoy Chapter 1's box office outlook. 8. The first chapter of Horizon, an American Saga, is too long. Although it is common for epic tales to be divided into several films, critics have expressed concerns regarding the duration of Horizon, an American Saga, Chapter 1. According to Costner, the entire Grand Horizon, an American Saga story will be told over a total of 12 hours of running time. Since there are only 4 chapters in the film, each of the films will need to run for approximately 3 hours on average. The duration of Horizon, an American Saga, Chapter 1 was 181 minutes. Unfortunately, reviewers seem to agree that it feels even longer. Nicholas Barber of the BBC called the film a 3-hour slog and added that it was full of stultifyingly slow dialogue scenes. His observations were in line with many of the earlier reviews, which expressed the near-unanimous opinion that the film's massive runtime is out of proportion to its level of engagement. Given the number of storylines and characters in Horizon, it's possible that the 3 hours and 40 minutes mark is even conservative. 7. The only thing covered in Chapter 1 of Horizon, an American Saga, is setting up the upcoming chapters. Early reviews of Horizon, an American Saga, Chapter 1 were almost universally critical of the film for lacking any real resolution for the numerous characters and stories that are introduced. Once more, it is not unusual for stories to be told across multiple films, but the general consensus is that each film offers a satisfying structure and plot that stands alone. Costner's epic, on the other hand, seems to be doing little more than serving as an introduction to the other chapters. Chapter 1's detached nature was summed up by Vanity Fair's Owen Gleiberman as follows. Rather than developing a Western saga in a strong, cohesive arc, Costner offers up 3 hours of anecdotes, cross-cutting between character groups, dipping into situations that are dropped just as quickly, providing a flimsy synopsis of life on the range, and frequently leaving the audience to piece together the backstory of what they're witnessing. Any standalone film would find it difficult to feel cohesive given the large ensemble cast and multiple storylines that span multiple years, which is why Costner decided to make 4 films. However, just because the overall plot is far longer doesn't mean that Horizon, an American Saga, Chapter 1 can function as nothing more than an exposition machine. The stories that are introduced in Chapter 1 should all be resolved and concluded in later chapters, but this fragmented introduction to the larger Horizon universe is cause for concern. 6. Chapter 1 of Horizon. An American Saga doesn't feel like a movie. Ryan Latanzio of IndieWire put it bluntly, a quote-unquote sweeping American saga that feels like an expensive miniseries compressed into feature form. The thought that this would work much better as a TV series than as a series of feature films was sparked by the sheer scope of the overarching story being told, the large cast, and the variety of settings. The fact that so many different characters and plot threads are introduced all at once recalls the early episodes of prestige dramas like Game of Thrones or Westworld. That's unfortunate because it becomes jarring and unpleasant when that happens over 3 hours instead of a condensed 54 minutes of episodic television. Horizon, An American Saga appears to be following 4 major threads, but based on critic reactions, not enough time is spent with any of those threads to establish the plot or characters effectively. As a result, the show feels more like the first episode of a massive series about to unfold over 7 or 8 episodes, maybe 4 or 5 seasons, like the hit drama Yellowstone that Costner left behind. 5. There is no story structure in Chapter 1 of Horizon, an American Saga. Horizon, an American Saga. Chapter 1 is little more than a stilted avalanche of character and location introductions, and is said to lack anything that represents a cohesive story in the traditional sense. Chapter 1 punts on the concept of story structure, constantly introducing new plots and characters, and has no beginning, middle, climax, or end, because all the various threads end on a sort of cliffhanger, knowing that they will all be resolved in at least one more movie to come. Again, this works for the pilot of an episodic television show or miniseries, but it doesn't work for a feature film. There is very little thematically or narratively connecting characters, making it feel like more of an anthology that's been haphazardly stitched together, wrote Collider's Chase Hutchinson. As an actor, producer, and director, Kevin Costner has made some truly great westerns, but his hit films, Dances with Wolves in particular, have always had compelling plots and well-written characters. If early reviews are any indication, this isn't likely to be the case with Horizon, an American Saga. 4. Characters in Chapter 1 of Horizon, an American Saga, are not well detailed. It seems that even with its singular focus on character introductions rather than a compelling main plot, Horizon, an American Saga. Chapter 1 is unable to fully develop any of the characters. The film's rapid-fire editing style leaves little opportunity for character growth, even with its long-running length, leaving the audience with few characters to truly care about. As a result, the film lacks any compelling characters that will entice viewers to continue on to Chapter 2. It's a serious mistake to not give enough attention to any of the characters who are supposed to carry the narrative. It seems pretty obvious that Costner would have benefited from perhaps cutting out some of the lesser characters and plot threads in favor of fully fleshing out the ones that truly matter. Robert Daniels of RogerEbert.com put an exclamation point on the idea that Horizon does a poor job of building its characters. It gives us few memorable characters outside of Costner. I can't remember the name of a single figure without looking at my notes. 3. The first chapter of Horizon, an American Saga, is boring. One more thing that unites early reviews of Horizon, an American Saga. Chapter 1 is the lack of anything noteworthy in the film. Costner, when he conceived Horizon in 1988, wanted to be very deliberate about creating a traditional Western, and by all accounts he's hit many of the notes that audiences would expect from a traditional Western, but that leaves little room for anything new or original, and as a result, the film lacks excitement. There's something to be said for challenging the status quo, even though nobody was expecting Kevin Costner to upend Jamie Samuel's The Harder They Fall with something that revolutionized the Western genre, as Hoai-Tran Boy of Inverse put it. Every magnificent vista and each swooningly romantic moment can't make up for the fact that Horizon is excruciatingly dull. Judging by early reviews, Costner was content to hit all the most familiar notes, and when combined with the lack of an interesting plot, the entire thing is just plain boring. 2. There is not much action in Chapter 1 of Horizon, an American Saga. Western action scenes such as horse chases, shootouts, train robberies, and arid mountains are as much a part of the Western aesthetic as deserts, arid mountains, and saloons. Sadly, it appears that the action was neglected in the rush to introduce every character that will be involved in the larger Horizon saga, as noted by Gregory Elwood of The Playlist, who stated, "To be frank, there aren't many standout cinematic moments in Horizon. The movie's opening sequence, which features an Apache attack on the burgeoning Horizon settlement, is one of the most frequently praised scenes from the early reviews. It was well received for the intensity and way it was shot, but as Elwood added, in many ways this extended sequence teases what the movie might have been. Costner clearly suffered from not capitalizing on some of the most exciting aspects of Westerns, which is why they have always and probably always will appeal to American moviegoers. 1. Chapter 1 of Horizon. An American Saga falls short in developing the indigenous perspective. Horizon. An American Saga. Chapter 1 had a direct comparison to examine when it made its premiere at this year's Cannes Film Festival, given the prominence of Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon last year. Regrettably, early reviews seem fairly unanimous in pointing out that Costner failed to adequately establish the perspective of the indigenous tribes during the period of the American expansion. That's not to say it entirely reverts to the spaghetti western style of the 1960s in its handling of the touchy subject matter, but it's also not a huge success. Sadly, this occurs shortly after the previously mentioned opening scene, which shows Native American warriors massacre a mostly white settlement. Esther Zuckerman of the Daily Beast described the attack, writing, "The Native American assailants are shadowy figures who attack unprovoked. There are nods to nuance that come later, but far too little in the first part of Costner's passion project." To be clear, there are attempts made by white characters to explain the justified motivations of the indigenous tribes that wage war with the settlers. As with most criticisms of Horizon, An American Saga, movies shouldn't be made that rely solely on a second chapter for the story to be understood and appreciated, especially when the film is 3 hours long. While Chapter 1 introduces a plot thread from the perspective of an indigenous tribe, critics seem to agree that it isn't given the proper weight. If more attention is given to that perspective in Chapter 2, it could be a positive step in truly telling two sides of the story of American expansion in the Old West.